So the question is, are you satisfied with this edge room, or are they a piece away still?
I think because you have bolstered the interior defensive line so much this offseason, that you're fine with not maybe having the same firepower at edge as we're used to in years past. Isaiah
Right.
McGuire, I think, was somebody who showed a lot at the end of last year, was one of the highest graded run defenders in all of football, according to Pro Football Focus. And then also, I thought played some pretty solid football at the end of the year when he was given the full opportunity to be the edge defender for the Browns and provides a pretty useful service, right? Like he's really good at containing stuff and run defending, which is what you need when you're the guy opposite of Miles, who's probably going to get ran on a lot, right? Like they're going to run towards you. They're going to run away from Miles and Mason. So,
Yeah.
I think he's not a superstar, but he is somebody who can get the job done. You have Alex Wright, who you felt good about before he popped his bicep last year. And then, between Obo Okoronkwo and Joe Tryon, you have the chance for, one of those guys to fulfill that role. So I think the edge room, what I think people wanted to address and what I wanted to address with getting Abdul Carter was defensive line firepower. You addressed that with Mason Graham, who, if you weren't going to go Abdul and you wanted to address the defensive line, then that would be the best way to go. So, yeah, I think I'm happy with where the defensive line is, and I'm happy they've invested with the defensive interior, especially Jim Schwartz defense, which you look at the great Jim Schwartz defenses, you're going to see some phenomenal three techs on those rosters. And that was one thing this Browns team was missing for that Jim Schwartz DNA.
Yeah, absolutely. And as much as I like Dalvin Tomlinson, I think Malik Collins is a better fit, pressure rate wise, for this. So that's kind of where they stand. You named it. It's Miles Garrett. They're hoping at this point Isaiah McGuire steps into that starting role. You feel like, right? Like he should probably take the most snaps opposite Miles this year. You think?
I think he did. He did last year, right? So I mean, he wouldn't even have to step in. He would just have to still be the starter, right? Because he ended the year as a starter. I think once you traded Zadarius, he was the
After
starter for the rest of
Zadarius,
for the rest of the year. So yeah, I think the fact that there's no noise on bringing back Zadarius Smith, and it seems like the Browns are pretty happy with Isaiah McGuire, who was a third-round pick a couple of years ago. Seems to have filled in pretty well. So I think they want to get some value out of that, and I think that makes a ton of sense. And I think they're sitting pretty. And like Isaiah McGuire's not a bad football player, right? I think he provides a lot of value there. It's just like, is Isaiah McGuire a 15 sack guy, a 10 sack guy, or something like that? No, but I don't know if you need that when you got Myles Garrett, right? Like, hey, Myles Garrett can get you all the sack production you need.
Yeah, I think the ultimate question is like between Isaiah McGuire, Joe Tryon, Okoronkwo, and Alex Wright, in the aggregate, can they provide you what you need opposite Myles Garrett? You know
I
what I
think
mean?
I think so. Yeah, you're going to get a little
Yeah,
bit from Mike Hall, right? You're
yeah,
going to get a little bit from Mason Graham, and also consider, right? We talked about this. Remember in the 2021 season, how bad our linebacker play looked because of how
yep,
bad our defensive tackle play was. Well, now look at this defense, a completely different situation, right? You have Myles Garrett, who's going to command a ton of attention, Mason Graham, who you hope is going to command attention as well, and then you have just a rotation of guys behind that. Mike Hall, Malik Collins, right? Shelby Harris is still on the team. So
yep,
you have a rotation of three techs that you can put in, which means that the lanes for these linebackers are going to be pretty significant to make plays in the backfield for, right? When you do blitz a DB, it's going to be more successful. So Carson Schlesinger, right? They invested in him. They brought in Jerome Baker.
yep.
They still have. Do they still have Jordan Hicks on the roster?
They do.
Yeah,
I
Jordan
expect
Hicks
him to
is
be their
still here.
starting
They
Mike.
brought
Yeah,
back Devin Bush. So like that linebacker room for the first time, even without JOK being a part of it, it's
it's
pretty
good.
complete. Like it's
Yeah,
pretty full. So they're gonna be able to
Diabate.
have the space. Yeah, Diabate, yeah. They're gonna have a lot of space to make plays, get downhill, and get behind the line of scrimmage because of the investment on the defensive line. And I think that's going to pay dividends throughout the year. Obviously, Miles commands a ton of attention on the
Yeah,
line of scrimmage, and you got a lot of different things you can throw at teams in order to win that battle in the box. And I think they really invested in that defensively.
Yeah, we always talk about like with the wide receiver room, like how it should be like a basketball team where you got like the slot guy, the forward, small forward, power forward.
Hmm.
They kind of have that across the defensive line. They have guys that can do different stuff at edge. They have guys that can do different stuff on the interior. Uh, Alex Wright being one of them. Do you think Alex Wright plays more inside snaps or outside snaps this year?
I think he plays a lot of power and snaps, so more like the 4-eye position,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
Um, I
But
don't
at
think he
edge.
goes like super wide. I think he kind of stays inside. Maybe you can put Isaiah McGuire on the outside of him in some like super heavy line sets.
Yeah.
Um, maybe if you have a package out there where you want to run a nose tackle out there, you could put him at 3 tech next to a nose tackle.
Yep.
So we're talking about like when Jawan Briggs is on the field,
Yep.
there's a role there for Alex Wright. Or maybe, he plays so well at the edge position that he kind of just beats out the
Yeah.
need to even have a Joe Tryon or a Obo Okoronkwo there, and the Browns can feel like they can replace that with just moving Devin Bush around.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm excited about Alex Wright. I heard him on an interview on a big play show, and he sounded different than I've ever heard him sound. He sounded super focused and like determined, and he was like, we're wiping the slate clean. We've got a lot to prove. But yeah, it was a really good interview from him. All right, I want to look at this list here, though, even though we are talking to Edge, and because Okoronkwo was potentially on the trade block at one point. I want to look at what Pro Football Network says as of May 2nd, who potentially could be traded or cut even. Now, some of these are a bit of a stretch. All right. So the first one at Edge here, Quincy, they have listed. This is one of those one player from one team that could be traded or cut, right?
Mm-hmm.
From the Ravens, they have Adafe Owe. And as a potential trade target for
Oh, okay,
teams.
trade.
Yes. Because he's on his 5th-year option, and they drafted Mike Green in the 2nd round, and they have not extended him yet, which is kind of puzzling for people. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, Odafe and Mike don't play similarly. I don't expect Mike Green to be useful in year one, right? I think David Ojabo is somebody that they've been wanting to get a lot more from over the last couple of
Yep.
years. And I think that's the role that Mike Green is coming for, right? I think if you look at Odafe Owe and how he's being used, the Ravens have an obsession with like these long, skinny, edges that are super athletic that can drop back in coverage. That's what Zach Orr likes to do with them. I think
Yeah.
that's kind of what he wants. And for like the true edge position guys, I think that's what Mike Green is there to compete with there. So, or to take over for. So I don't think Odafe is going to be the one that shakes loose. I think there's a chance that maybe Ojabo is more available than people think. The Ravens' edges have not been great. Like their best
No.
pass rusher has been Kyle Vinoy for like the last
Yeah.
couple of years. So they're looking for solutions there, but they try to overwhelm you with sim pressure and
Yep.
just bodies, right? That's what Baltimore tries to do.
Yep.
So if you're going to do that, I think they want to keep as many bodies as possible.
Um, the fact that they haven't given him an extension yet, do you think they extend him? Or do you think he goes as a free agent next year away? It depends
Nah,
on his probably
he's
this
play out
season.
his 5th-year option good, right? And sign for
Yeah.
somewhere else for like a pretty middling deal.
Okay.
He's not so good that you got to extend him right now. I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, that's fair. They allude in this article that there is a bit of a disconnect about his true pass rush ability in the building. So interesting.
Yeah, that's fair. I
Um,
mean, again,
yeah,
Calvin Noy has been the
yeah, once
production
again,
leader on that
yeah,
team.
for sure.
And that's not what Calvin Noy has ever been known for.
Yeah. Second name on here is Buffalo Bills edge AJ Epanessa.
Hmm.
Um, probably not looking. It says probably not looking to break up their roster. The former 2nd rounder is come dependable part of the rotation, 6.5 sacks in 3 straight seasons. Now entering a contract year, Epanessa is in a far more crowded room with Joey Bosa, Michael Holt in free agency, and Landon Jackson in the third round. Um, does that make him expendable for Buffalo? It also potentially throws the idea out here about Von Miller. So, um, is Epinesa a sneaky trade candidate?
If the Browns hadn't gone after like Joe Tryon in free agency, maybe this would make sense
Maybe.
because this
Yeah.
is like the kind of guy that the Browns love to go after, right? These picks that didn't work out initially for whatever reason on the teams
Yeah.
that they selected. So the Browns try to get value here. He's been a 6 sack a year guy in Buffalo, which is not nothing. Maybe if the Browns have an injury at camp, there's something that could come up. But other than that, I think the Browns will probably stay away from it.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I think that's very fair. I do as I'm scrolling through this Q. This is wild, right? All right. So, who would you think that player would be on these lists? Trade cut candidate for the Cleveland Browns. It's from Pro Football Network.
Ooh, okay. Trade cut candidate. We're just talking defense.
No, any player on the team.
Any player. Well, Greg Newsom's a fun name to always throw out there, right? Because people love
Yep.
throwing Greg Newsom out there.
That's not it.
Let's see. It's not that. I can't imagine it's any of our safeties because they're not expendable at this point.
Correct.
Maybe somebody threw. It could be. I would be shocked if it's Martin because I don't think anybody's really gotten there yet.
It's not a name that I don't think any of us view as expendable. I'll just say that.
Okay. Okay. So it's not a name people feel is expendable. It can't be a wide receiver because there's the only one that you could trade realistically is Jerry Jeudy, and there's no shot you're gonna put him there.
He's your only guy, yeah.
Maybe somebody thinks they're getting cute with like David Njoku because we took Harold Fannin. It was David. Yeah.
Yep. Which is mind blowing to me. Like that. I mean, he is a massive part of their pass game this year, in my opinion. So, that would be mind blowing to me. But I thought that was interesting that they threw him up there.
Yeah, especially since the Browns are trying to play so much power football this year. They talked about it. Joe has talked about it on the Browns podcast where he's like, "We're going to run some power, right? Well, you know what you need to run power? Tight ends. You need a lot of tight ends to run power, right?
Yeah.
So no, they're going to have 3 tight ends at least on this roster, and David Njoku is going to be a huge part of what they want to do if they want to play low yield smash mouth football.
So those are the 2 guys that they have at edge, really. On there, there's a free agent. Let me look at this. Are there any free agents out there that interest you still at edge? There was one guy I had a little interest in, but I don't know how they feel at this point. Like, because it felt like Ogbo at one point was gone. Like it felt like a done deal to me.
Mm-hmm.
And just not drafting a guy is interesting. Like, is he back in the fold now for sure?
And the board might have fell Obo's way, right? Like I think that happens a lot where it's like, hey, depending on how the board falls, depending on how we're anticipating the board falling, we don't think we're going to want this player, but then the board falls a certain way. I think the opposite actually happened for like Nick Chubb, right? Where I think the Browns went into the draft thinking, okay, maybe the board falls our way, maybe it doesn't, because you got to think they were going into that draft knowing that they wanted to take Schlesinger with that 33rd pick. And then thinking, okay, well, then we have to wait to the 3rd round to get the running back we want. And maybe that running back would have been Dylan Sampson. But then they got that extra pick and were able to get Quinshon Judkins. And then Dylan Sampson fell to the 4th, so they were able to grab him. And they probably walked out the draft saying, well, the board fell our way with the running back. But with Edge, bought Obo another year.
Yeah, it may have, the question is, the $5 million. I know that Jack is not happy about that number for him at this point because this is the out year in his contract, right? So
Mm-hmm.
Von Miller, Matt Judon, Preston Smith, Z, is it still out there? Zadarius, Jadeveon Clowney, we've seen that movie. Um, DeMarcus Walker,
He got
Kaiser
cut. I
White.
thought he got a 2-year deal from Carolina.
Who's that?
Jadavion.
Yeah, he got cut.
Wow. The man
He's
cannot buy a
out.
2-year deal to save his life.
Right. He can't stick anywhere. Who was I looking at? There's so many names on here. It's crazy. After a while, they become
Yeah.
obsolete. But
I think the tough part about signing a free agent to at this point is a lot of these guys are holding out for competitive teams. Right.
Yep. What do you think about a guy like Carl Lawson?
Coming off a lot of injuries, had a lot of potential. I just don't see that being worth a roster spot, if I'm being honest with you. Like, I think that's the biggest problem I see with it is he feels like he's at the point to where he's a practice squad guy.
Okay.
And just not worth a full roster spot. And I think the Browns are pretty happy with their edge room, with their defensive line in general. And the way that they like to cut down the roster, they consider it a defensive line room, right? They tell you we're keeping 10 guys in the D line room. So if they have less edges that they can keep out there, but people they feel like are flexible, then they're going to deal with less depth at edge because they can feel like they make it up for it with the amount of defensive line talent they have in total.
They have a edge from Tulane in UDFA, Aiden Huntington. You done any work on him or thoughts on him at all? Does he have a chance to make this roster? I know Pete likes him.
Yeah, I don't know much about the UDFA class. I'm gonna be honest with you. This just is a year where I don't think they're gonna roster a ton of UDFA guys. They started this draft with 12 picks, and they whittled that down to 7.
Yeah.
So they're not trying to roster a ton of guys, right?
They
told you right there.
Right?
Yeah, they told you right there. We're not trying to roster a ton of guys. So I don't know how much we're gonna retain from this UDFA class. Especially given like this was also a class where, some years like Mahmoud Diabite, where they gave out like these big bonuses, right, to a UDFA or like they did with AJ Green. I don't think they've really done anything on that level this year to UDFA, which again tells you what the priority of these guys is, which is, hey, man, if you blow us away, you can make the team. But for the most part, we're going to have enough issues trying to get to 53. We don't need more guys.
The only guy in UDFA class that I think has a real shot, maybe outside shot, maybe less now that they signed the 2 veterans, but Donovan McMillan, I liked a lot. And safety is a place where you could find your way onto this roster, I think, potentially.
I mean, the guy starting right now is UDFA in himself and Ronnie Hickman, right?
Exactly.
So,
Yep.
Yeah, and with the way Jim Schwartz likes to play his safety, right? He plays what's called a post safety, which is, hold your ground. Really, you're going to be run defending a lot.
Yep.
And then carry the post, right? Can you just read the post, carry the post? We're not going to ask you to be downhill a lot. It's a babysitter role, right? So that's going to be not the most difficult role to fill. We'll see how Ronnie Hickman holds up as a run defender, but I think if McMillan can come in, prove that he could be a difference maker as a run defender day one, then I think he has a chance to make the roster.
What did you think of the 2 safeties they brought in real quickly?
The vets,
KZ and Jenkins.
I like the philosophy behind it, right? You bring in 2 veteran players to compete for the safety job with Ronnie Hickman, and the idea is, all right, well, if Ronnie Hickman can beat these 2 guys out, these are legitimate veteran players, then we can keep one to be a backup, and then start Ronnie Hickman, and we're good, right? Yep. Like, we hit on an undrafted guy that's a legitimate starter. Cool. If Ronnie Hickman cannot take these guys' job, then Ronnie Hickman is a serviceable backup, and then you keep the starter, right? So I think what their plan is there ultimately makes a ton of sense, and I agree with it.
Yeah, I agree too. KZ strikes me as the guy that would play free or challenge him the most. And Jenkins is a kind of he's done it all in his career, but more recently in his career, he's been more of a box safety. So, but he kind of strikes me as a guy that you could use in the same vein as a Rodney McLeod role, right? Like,
Yeah,
you know,
and
he can do it all.
remember, we're not asking for a guy to be, Minka Fitzpatrick out there where we're like,
Exactly.
oh yeah, be rangy, right? So even if somebody is more of a box safety, that matches what the Browns want to do. If you look at a lot of what Juan Thornhill did on the Cleveland Browns last year or the last 2 years, it was a lot of run defending, right? Like that's what he provided was good run defending. And that's what they're going to look to replace is that run defending ability with a little bit more caution when it comes to being that post safety and not taking bait, right?
Yep.
And that's what you worry about with a young player like Ronnie Hickman is can he get to his run fits and then can he not take the bait there? So, yeah, even if somebody is more of a box safety, I think a post safety role fits them as well.